Japanese tennis star Naomi Osaka could be thrown out of the French Open if she continues boycotting media events at Roland Garros. Osaka has been fined almost $20,000 for skipping out on her post-match interview after beating Romania's Patricia Maria Tig in the first round. Ben Rothenberg is a tennis writer with New York Times and he joins us now from Washington. Ben, g'day, good to speak to you again. Is this a bit tough for you because you're a tennis writer and you love the game, but you also have developed a connection with the players and no doubt have sympathy for the challenges they confront? How do you feel about how this situation has developed?
Yeah, for sure. It can feel personal as a tennis member of the media when she's criticizing the media or saying the media is causing these problems for her and then seeing the blowback for that. Osaka's been someone who I think a lot of the media has gotten along very well with before. So this came out a bit of left field in terms of whether or not people were expecting her to have problems based on media or that's how she was framing it. So it really has been a kind of week that's taken a lot of people in the press room off guard.
Yeah. And so take us through her reasoning behind this.
Yeah, so basically her initial statement said that she was not happy that press conferences were mandatory after matches at Grand Slams, which they have been, and subject to a fine if you skip it, because she felt like press conferences were causing her doubts or subjecting her to people who doubted her, and that she was dealing with some sort of mental health issue. And actually just recently, her sister, Mari, put a statement up on Reddit that kind of added more clarity to that, saying that Naomi had felt very low on confidence on clay, which is the surface the French Open is on, which has been one of her weakest surfaces after a couple bad losses, and that she really just wanted to safeguard herself and inoculate herself from the criticisms and doubts that maybe come in from questions at press conferences about struggling on clay, and that she felt like she needed to do this to safeguard her confidence and her mentality going into this Grand Slam, and she's trying to win her third Grand Slam title in a row.
And so as a member of the media, how do you feel about that reasoning?
You know, I think that I understand her wanting to skip, and honestly, I don't have a huge problem with her deciding it's worth it to me to pay the fine and I'm not going to do this. What I didn't appreciate probably as much was the sort of characterization that she had initially, that the media was kind of being callous or not caring about her well-being or her happiness or her mental state or mental health. I thought that part was probably unfair to the media, and I think she's had a very good relationship with the media in the past. But yeah, if I understand also the tournament really not being happy with this and threatening huge sanctions against her, because it really does undermine the business model of a tournament to have a player refuse to take part in this massively important promotional side of the event.
Do you think those post-match media conferences should be compulsory for players?
That's the way it's always been in my time. That's how I've known it. And I don't really think many players have had a problem with that system. And occasionally when they do take a tough loss and decide to take a fine, that those things happen. I think it was really Naomi challenging the rule, preemptively and premeditatedly, that really caused sort of an existential crisis for the tennis media, seeing that someone could try to upend the system so radically. And I think that's why probably the Grand Slams came out as forcefully as they did, with the kind of language they had about possibly defaulting her or suspending her from future events.
Yeah, what do you think the chances are of that actually happening?
I gotta think low. I mean, I do think that they'll be able to reach some sort of compromise. It's 3 days until she plays her next match. I would hope that the sort of cooler heads will prevail and she'll meet with the people backstage. That was one of the other things the Slams said, that they didn't appreciate that they had not been able to really sit down and talk with her and get her side of things to set things straight. So, I would hope that there'll be time for these fences to be mended in time for her next match, because otherwise it puts them in an increasingly tough position of wanting to not set a precedent that this can be, tolerated, this kind of abject media, renouncing.
And so what kind of compromise do you think could be struck?
I think it would just be more about getting her in a good headspace for anything. I'm not sure you can really police the sort of questions that she would get, but I think that you can make it set up so that she's happier before, during, and after these press conferences, whether that's, talking to someone, some sort of therapist or other professional, excuse me, who can help her understand these questions and not have the sort of lingering doubts that she's saying have stuck with her after some questions that she finds unnerving. Because
in the end, do you think they should just learn how to deal with it because it is part of the culture?
I don't think that Naomi's going to be able to continue avoiding press conferences for her career. And I think that that's not something really that the other players have said should be an option too. They say it's all part of the job. And I think that she eventually is going to have to probably learn how to process this part of the job more effectively, even if it is challenging. I mean, it's something that all players do, and I think that she should be given the resources to help process and deal with this challenge for her as best as possible, so that she is as well as she can be.
Ben, have you ever been in any of those post-match media conferences and you've felt sorry for the player because I'm sure some members of the public have seen some of those media conferences and see some journalists ask questions that, oh my God, that was such a stupid question, or players are feeling shoddy after a poor match performance. What's it like being in the media pack at those media conferences?
I really do think the player does a lot to set the tone of the press conferences.
Yeah.
I think they really have more control over it than maybe they sometimes realize they do, because being in lots of different athletes' press conferences, every player has their own tone and their own sort of posture they set that sets the tone for their press conference. Even if they're not the ones asking the questions, they really can set a tone. And so there are players for sure, like some of the Australians, like Nick Kyrgios come to mind, who have very adversarial tones sometimes.
Yeah,
especially
I think you've had a few encounters with him, haven't you?
Yeah, sometimes for sure. But everyone kind of does, and he intentionally comes in, looking for a fight, or looking for some, maybe ways to score different kinds of wins after a loss, or even not after a loss, which that's kind of how he is. And I think that that sort of tone can happen for some players who, for whatever reason, are controversial or divisive or polarizing, whatever it may be. And I think what's interesting about the Osaka case is that Osaka was really not in that category. Osaka was someone who had very amicable media relations, both with international press and with the Japanese press, who have accommodated her not speaking Japanese during press conferences very willingly and helpfully.
And was willing to use her platform to make a point on political issues.
Yeah, and I think the media absolutely was supportive of that and was willing to, engage with her on those kind of topics at the U.S. Open when she was protesting about Black Lives Matter issues and the like. So I think that's probably why people in the media, myself included, were probably taken aback that this strong of a stance came from her, given her, I think, really positive, at least from my view, really positive experiences and interactions and relationships with the media who covers her most.
Yeah, hopefully there'll be some kind of resolution. Okay, Ben Rothenberg, thanks so much for talking to us from Washington.
Thanks, Joe.